At first glance, it seems like the Ukrainians missed the timing. However, recently Russian sources started to increasingly reports about massive reinforcement from Kharkiv to the Oskil front line. The reports suggest that the Ukrainians are deploying their heaviest machinery, meaning they might have reinforced the southern axis with light machinery. On top of that, some sources indicate that the Ukrainians plan to take Lyman precisely around this time. However, bad weather conditions did not allow them to develop their offensive as fast as expected. Russian sources also reported today that the Ukrainians managed to establish a stable bridgehead on the other bank of the Oskil River. All of that seems to suggest that the actual counteroffensive will probably happen in Luhansk. Was this a cunning plan all along? I actually do not think that this was the original Ukrainian plan. I think the Ukrainians were willing to quickly adapt. I think their original plan was indeed to launch a counteroffensive in the Zaporizhia region. However, in light of new circumstances, such as unexpected difficulties with logistics and bigger success in the Lyman area than expected, the Ukrainians decided to change their plans, effectively once again exploiting the biggest Russian vulnerability, which is being rigid combined with the fact that it physically takes them longer to adjust. As I told you previously, I see a huge potential for the Ukrainians in the Luhansk region. The northern part of the Luhansk region simply does not have a lot of good positions for defense. The settlements are small and sparsely located. Moreover, most of the Russian forces are already in the south. Therefore, this looks like a good opportunity for the Ukrainians. Very soon, we will see how it turns out. If you are against the invasion of Ukraine and want to support the work that I am doing, consider making a purchase in the online store UA Supporter. Here you can find a lot of products with Ukrainian symbols, to not only show your support for this channel, but also for Ukraine. Around 2 weeks ago, I told you that after the Ukrainians managed to chase the Russians from the Kharkiv region, they started to immediately relocate their troops to the Zaporizhia region to start their next counteroffensive. The Russians also saw this and struck critical infrastructure that caused a blackout and significantly complicated Ukrainians' logistics. It seemed like a race. Whoever relocates their troops faster wins the next counteroffensive before it even starts. It's been almost 2 weeks, so the Russians have definitely reinforced this region by now. Does this mean the Russians were able to force the Ukrainians to cancel their counteroffensive? Yes, and no. The outcome of the Kharkiv counteroffensive became clear by September 10th. Immediately after that, the Ukrainians started the process of demining the fields around Volodar. Sabotage activity between Melitopol and Mariupol has increased. Russian authorities in charge of the Zaporizhia region noted that the accumulation of Ukrainian forces along the front line is colossal. A massive fist of 3,000 troops was already prepared to be launched in the direction of Tokmak. On top of that, the Ukrainians loaded their trains in Kharkiv with machinery to reinforce the southern axis even more. The threat level was unprecedented, forcing the Russians to strike critical infrastructure to derange Ukrainian logistics. This bought them some time. On September 15th, the Ukrainians conducted a missile strike and struck the airfield in Melitopol. Sabotage attacks continued. On September 17th, the Ukrainians conducted extensive partisan attacks on Russian military assets and logistics. They detonated explosives at the Niziany rail station to prevent further supplies of military equipment from the occupied Crimea. On the same day, explosions were reported on Russian bases in Bohdair, Radivonivka and Bilmak. All of that strongly indicates that the Ukrainians were destroying existing Russian forces, preventing reinforcements, and also conducting a lot of reconnaissance as a part of their preparation for the counteroffensive. However, suddenly the activity became much lower. Over the last week, only several mild attacks around Volodar were reported, and that's it. It is also clear that the Russians have finished regrouping and reinforced this region a lot. Some sources indicate that the Russians even deployed parts of their newly formed Third Army Corps.